Hey guys, welcome back to the American Experiment podcast. My name is Grace Keating. As always, I'm here with Kathryn Johnson. Stick around for the second half of today's episode. We're going to bring in John Hinderaker, our president here at Center of the American Experiment, to talk about the Israel-Iran situation.
Grace, 10 out of 10. You did not dead name me this week, so thank you. Also, I want to just let the audience know that we cut out about a 2-minute conversation on Costco and paper goods. And we're going to get straight into the content for you now because...
just for you guys.
You know, it went on a little long, okay? But if you want our thoughts on where you should grocery shop for different items, just ask us because we have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
But today, what is on the news plate for us now, Grace?
Bit of a news dump this week. We've got some pretty crazy international news happening, obviously, with the situation in Israel and Iran. We're not going to get too much into that on this show because that's just not our arena. We're a state-based think tank. We did want to point out something that Bill Glahn noticed kind of in the hours as this whole situation was unfolding. So around 8 p.m., all of the Democrat governors in the U.S. started putting out kind of the same tweet with this weird monitoring language.
Yeah, it was closely monitoring or following closely. They all use kind of similar language around the same time.
Yeah.
And it really blew up into quite a good meme too on the internet of monitoring the situation, especially because all of these people, these state-based governors, why are you monitoring the situation, Governor Walz? I'm not really concerned about are you involved? It's he's just trying to place himself in every situation. They all are. So it's just funny. They feel the need to make a statement saying that they're closely monitoring what's going on. Thanks for your work, Governor Walz.
That's exactly, it was that impulse of all of them to just jump in and you're right. I guess feel like they're doing something, they're protecting their citizens, they're bombing the Middle East.
What will you do, Governor Walz? What will you get in there? You'll suit up? I don't know. I think that's so funny and shows the obsessiveness with public leaders to comment on absolutely everything that's going on. It reminds me of the Minneapolis City Council when they declared they wanted, what did they say? End the genocide in Gaza or something like that. They passed this whole resolution as if anyone in the Middle East is paying attention to the Minneapolis City Council. There's just this weird obsession to involve yourself in everything going on and make a statement in everything going on. It's fine. You can skip one.
It's such an ego thing. And the list of people doing it is so funny. You've got Walz putting it out right away. You've got Hochul from New York, Pritzker from Illinois, Newsom from California. I think the mayor of LA used exactly the same language. And it is such a good meme because it's literally the same. It's copy and paste. Someone sent all of these governors the exact tweet to put out and they ran it through Chat GPT and said, give me 7 variations on this. And that's what they were putting
they
out.
probably did. Okay, that is so funny. It's just all those names are people I don't want monitoring the situation. Please stay away from this.
Yeah.
It's too high stakes for you to be involved. Kathy Hochul.
Yeah. Walz, okay, we should probably actually read one of these. They're all exactly the same, so we'll only read one. Walz, following the president's decision to bomb nuclear facilities in Iran, I've directed our public safety teams to be on heightened alert for potential threats to Minnesota. While there's no known threats at this time, we'll continue to monitor the situation and respond accordingly, which is even funnier reading it now because I'm just picturing missiles headed for Minnesota for some reason from Iran, and Walz is out there with his binoculars looking. He's alert the authorities.
We're monitoring the situation. Put up our shields
or something. What are you gonna do, Walz? It's so funny.
I do think this was very relatable, this meme monitoring the situation, to if you're in my position where you have a husband or a boyfriend or whoever that spends a lot of their time on X monitoring situations. There was a lot of funny memes about honey, I'm too busy monitoring the situation. Please leave me alone. I'm that was my husband on the beach when the Elon and the Trump drama was going down on our honeymoon. He's oh my God, you're never gonna believe what's happening. I was no, put the phone down. Put the phone down. We're on the beach.
Flashbacks to election night 2024 and my husband and father-in-law are all on the phone with each other, exchanging reports.
Good thing you're on it.
Now we might get a win. It's even better, the list of people who are putting out the monitoring the situation tweets too, because their home states are just such disasters. It's like, can you focus on your state and not worry about national security issues? Like, Walz, I know you wanted to be VP. I feel like you want to run for president. Can you just maybe wait until you're actually doing those things? And for right now, like, Minnesota is heading in kind of a maybe not so good direction. Let's see. So ICE arrested 11 Iranian nationals in 48 hours over, I believe, the last weekend, including one in St. Paul, right here in Minnesota, who had Hezbollah connections. And this is so interesting because these people have been living, so all of the 11 were kind of from around the country. They've all been living here for years.
Yes, it
illegally.
said 8 years. This one in St. Paul, he was living in Minnesota for 8 years. Illegally. And it's just like, this is such a good reason why we need to do something about the massive amount of illegal immigrants in the country, because they bring in, you get people like this. Of course you get great people as well, but they need to come in legally so that we can vet people, because otherwise people with ties to Hezbollah come in and no one does anything about them for 8 years.
Yeah. Well, and thank goodness, like, they were caught before anything really bad happened that we know of. But that's exactly right. Like, the damage done under the Biden administration by allowing this mass illegal immigration to continue, I don't think we'll really know the effects of for a long time, because it's cases like this where these people should not have been in the country and they were posing a very real threat to law-abiding American citizens.
Yeah, 100%. I also just saw, I think the Star Tribune posted it, but it was a poll about how many people agree with kind of like Trump's immigration policy. And it was super interesting. Let me just pull it up. Okay, so it says, the question was, do you support or oppose deporting undocumented immigrants without a court hearing? And it was like basically just split by party, Democrats and Republicans, which I just think is so interesting. Like, all Democrats opposed deporting undocumented immigrants without a court hearing, and almost all Republicans supported it. I don't know. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of issues that are like that, but that is it's so strong in this poll how much the parties disagree on this issue. And it's just so interesting to me, because when did that become such a party issue? It didn't used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, not that long ago, Obama and Hillary were saying, of course we need to do something about illegal immigration. It was a very common thing that people agreed on. Now, why is it like this? I don't understand quite what happened, except for that it became a more serious issue. We got so many more illegal immigrants. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how all that plays out as we continue to have obviously difficult situations like ICE officers having to go and arrest people who are here illegally. And yeah, it's hard to watch, but we'll have to see how it all plays out.
Yeah.
I certainly don't want people with ties to Hezbollah living in my neighborhood.
Yeah. And another reason to not go to St. Paul. You might run into someone
Seriously?
with Hezbollah connection.
Start a list. Hezbollah.
Oh my gosh.
Potholes.
Speaking of, oh my gosh. No, keep going. Let's keep it going.
Like empty storefronts. That's the other one that really gets me about St. Paul. It's all empty storefronts.
Yeah.
They can't, the place can't sustain one business. Oh, prison bars on the local McDonald's. The McDonald's by the Capitol has truly prison bars. Like, it looks like a prison that was turned into a McDonald's. It's really sad. Like, I
also feel like it vaguely smells like urine every time I'm walking through the streets of St. Paul. Like, I was there for
I did just have that
some
experience
event. Yeah.
in St. Paul. I was there. I was trying to take a Skyway in St. Paul to get somewhere. The Ordway? Okay, anyway, I got stuck in a staircase that smelled like human
excrement.
That's the word. I was like, I can't say the word, but I'm trying. Yes, that's the word.
And this is our capital city. It's just so sad.
It was scarring.
It's so sad.
So I don't go to St. Paul. Anyway, what happened in St. Paul, Grace?
Well, another reason to not go, great restaurants are closing. And this actually applies to St. Paul and Minneapolis. But this was a really interesting story. So in Lower Town, a longtime wood-fired pizza restaurant called Big River Pizza announced it would be closing. But the way they announced it is so interesting. They posted something on Facebook saying that the reason they were closing is, quote, a political and policy landscape in St. Paul that makes it increasingly difficult to ensure the safety of our employees. And they even go on to specify, like, this is not a reflection on the dedication of the police. We've received, outstanding support from them. It actually reflects broader policy challenges that have impacted our ability to operate. And they're the only restaurant that I've seen recently closing, naming public safety as a reason for closure. But other really famous restaurants are closing. There was just one that I think has won all sorts of awards in Minneapolis. Young Joni just closed. We've got Saint Dinette in St. Paul. Stepchild in northeast of Minneapolis. And you're seeing these beloved, like, almost institutions. A lot of them have been here for like over 10 years, which in a restaurant's life cycle, I think is pretty long. And they're kind of dropping like flies. And it's just another reason people are staying away from the Twin Cities.
I know, it's so sad because a lot of these, I think you'll see too, the different things that get reported. Like, people were talking about Young Joni saying it was a dispute over the landlord, kind of the tenant landlord contract or whatever. And, think about why that is. It's because it's really difficult to keep places going in these areas. It's expensive. Obviously, running a restaurant, you don't have huge margins anyway. But then also think of, from the landlord's perspective, all you have to do to keep your building safe and secure when there's a rampant crime going on and things like that. So you can see how this would happen. And it's such a bummer because it's one of the things that, of course, I still think makes our state great, as we do have. It's like the last reason I'll go into Minneapolis for the most part. They have great restaurants, places to go and eat. So it's really sad to see them close.
Well, and you're right, like, outside of even public safety, in terms of policy reasons to be shutting down, like, look at the paid family and medical leave stuff that was passed in St. Paul, like, small business owners and landlords too. It's becoming so much more difficult to just operate in our capital city and the state's biggest city. And unless lawmakers turn that around, we're going to see this continued death of these, what should be thriving cities, even post-COVID, when things really should be bouncing back.
One thing I have seen too that, like, on the plus side, I think a lot of places are expanding elsewhere into the suburbs and further out, which I love to see. Obviously, like, I want things thriving in our cities too, but over in Little Chanhassen, I feel like we're getting some cool new stuff. Like, Hope Breakfast Bar is coming, and they have said pretty publicly we're expanding into the suburbs intentionally, not really focusing. I think they still have locations in the cities, but they're expanding into the suburbs to try and, be in better areas, safer areas for their staff, things like that. So maybe that's a plus side.
Yeah. One final kind of big news item I did want to touch on this week. So in the wake of the, Hoffman-Hortman shootings, this was a threat of political violence, not an actual attack carried out, thank goodness, but there was a man arrested in Carver County, I believe in Chaska, who was sending threatening texts to, I want to say it was a representative that he was friends with.
Okay, I don't know how the representative makes his way in here, but we actually don't know who he's sending the text to. So he was sending these texts, but we don't know, based on the court filings, who they were to. But they're super jarring. Do you have one of them in front of you? I mean, we can't even say them because they're like very explicit, but they're threats about bringing a firearm into the Capitol and
shooting people in the face.
Yes.
Yep.
Which is just crazy that this person is a lobbyist who represents a group that represents mostly college professors.
Yep. In Minnesota.
7 college universities in Minnesota, I believe, use this firm to lobby for them. He's been placed on leave, obviously, now, but it's just insane that someone with such access to the Capitol, like a lobbyist, would be making such direct threats. Obviously, very scary. And you see this guy's picture too. Once again, he looks like a pretty normal guy. You wouldn't expect it, but I believe he's still in jail now. They set his bail at like $1 million. So
yeah, it's weird. There's a lot of weird details about this case too. So his name is Jonathan Bohn, Bohn. I think that's how you say it. And you're right. He looks like a very normal guy, which is, I think, one of the scary aspects of both of these cases. He says he was triggered after seeing a friend post an image of Trump as a king in conjunction with the June 14th No King's Day protest. And I'm not quite understanding if it was like a conservative posting that image as a joke or like a liberal posting that. It was just, so that's a really weird detail of it, I think. But then, he was in court on Friday after being charged with a felony for his threatening texts. And he apparently cried through like his entire testimony. And his statement he gave, he says he was in the midst of immense grief. He was in a moment of anguish, and he says, "I'm a hurting person, not a violent one." And be that as it may, gosh, it's just not acceptable. And it was such an unwise move. And my mind immediately goes back to Governor Walz's comments, I want to say 2 weeks ago, where he was giving a speech and he was saying, our side needs to be meaner. And this is exactly the kind of behavior that, to me, is what Walz wanted to see, is bolder strokes. And it's a frightening time we live in, I think.
Yeah, to quote him, in the midst of this lobbyist, in the midst of this immense grief, I sent a series of heated and emotional texts to a friend of nearly 13 years, someone who I've shared countless candid and passionate political conversations. Wow, that's just really kind of insane to think that this is just something you would say to a friend about how you're feeling. And yeah, I mean, really, just recently, they've all tried to walk this back now, and no one in the media will bring up Governor Walz's own words right before this happened, which was, we have to get meaner. And so now everyone, of course, wants to come together and be kumbaya, but we need to hold them accountable to saying that, because Walz does not have a good track record of toning down his language.
Yeah. Wow, that was kind of a serious story to end on. Is there anything more fun? Any sports updates for us, Kathryn?
Oh, do I ever have a sports update?
Ooh, okay.
I actually watched the finale of the basketball tournament.
All right.
And
Isaac, the basketball tournament? Is that what it's called?
Game 7 of the finals. Okay, thank you. I know, I said finale, and then I was like, that might not be the term they use. Okay, so Game 7, which is crazy because one doesn't always go to 7 games. So, but anyway, the star on the Pacers. Thank you. I just need to sort out my teams. There's the Pacers, and then there's the bad ones. We don't like the other ones because they played against the Timberwolves. Yeah,
these are terrible names. First of all,
I know.
Pacers. Ooh.
And they played against the Timberwolves, and they have this guy who will just like foul everything intentionally, and really is very annoying to watch. So, we like the other team, the Pacers. Anyway, the star of the Pacers in the first quarter went down, and everyone's been talking about he's got a strained calf or something like that. And it's just that's been a whole thing. And all of a sudden he goes down and he's going, no, and like slamming his fist on the ground and practically immediately in tears. Like he just knows something just like snapped in his body or whatever. Gross. Anyway, I think he ended up breaking his Achilles tendon. Is that right? Tore his Achilles.
Yeah, okay. They say you can tell right away. Like there's a pop when it happens, which is disgusting.
He knew. He was like devastated, and it was really sad because I feel like most people wanted the Pacers to win, right? Because no one likes these like foul-y merchant types. That's what I gather. And also that guy Tyrese Halliburton then went on Twitter and posted this really sad like long thing about, I'm so sorry I let people down. It was just very sweet. Obviously, it wasn't his fault, but yeah, that's a sports update.
So that's sports update too. I was looking for something to lift us up and on a high note.
Well, I don't know. The other guy has some fans. Shy. He has some fans. Shy? Shay. I think he has fans. He was like the MVP. Yeah, that's right.
All right, thank you.
So yeah, that's the finale. It was very interesting.
Finale. Oh, I think we're all caught up.
I don't think literally nothing's going on now in sports is what I'm hearing people say. I think it's like a sports lull. And the stories this week were really, I mean, everyone's focused, of course, on what's going on in Israel and Iran, but otherwise, like locally, dead. Session's over. Not a lot going on. Apparently sports are over.
I did hear Minneapolis is thinking about putting up speeding cameras to automatically fine you if you go through a red light or something. And like the fine system is so interesting. It's like if you're speeding but under 20 miles an hour, and I'm going to get this wrong, under 20 miles an hour over the limit, like it's like a $40 fine. If it's over 20 miles an hour over the limit.
Is it
It's
like
a $40
automatic,
fine.
like one of those license plate readers?
You get one warning. Yes. So like the cameras will capture you going too fast. The first one you get a warning, and then after that you get a fine, and then you get a bigger fine.
This is very bad news for me. Is it only in Minneapolis? You know?
Yeah, it's just Minneapolis.
Okay.
So
cool.
another reason.
I will not be going there anymore.
Okay, I think that's all we've got.
That's
for you guys
sad
this
news
week.
too.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Kind of a bummer of a week.
Okay.
I did have a question for all of you though.
Yeah, I think we should crowdsource this question. We feel like we need to rename our podcast specifically because it's the American Experiment Podcast right now, which I think is a good name for like the brand overall. But like, what if one day we want to have a different podcast that's not us like chit-chatting and
like, what if there are multiple podcasts under the American Experiment umbrella?
Exactly. Thank you.
Yes.
So what should our podcast be called? Because I don't feel like we should represent every single thing that we do here. I feel like it's a little more specific. We have a great audience going. Thank you guys for listening. What should we call it? Let us know. Drop it in the comments. We look at the comments on YouTube, on Spotify, anything like that. Give us some suggestions, some names, or generally anything else. I think maybe we should start a mailbag too. That's another thing.
I would love that.
Get some feedback. So maybe we'll work on that for next week. And we'll see you guys then. Drop us your suggestions.
Yeah, please. Again, all you guys are so great about this, but as always, remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications. You're doing all these things. We're reaching more people. So thank you. We'll see you next week. American Experiment is supported by thousands of individuals like you. To join the movement, go to www.americanexperiment.org and click the yellow donate button. From all of us here, thank you. Welcome back, guys. Today we are joined in studio by John Hinderaker, president of Center of the American Experiment. John, thank you for being here.
Happy to do it, Grace.
We're glad to bring you in to give us an update on the Israel-Iran situation. It's a topic you've spoken a lot about in the last few days on various news channels. I think Sky News especially.
We don't usually cover this kind of thing, but you've been all over the place talking about it for other people. So let's get you on the podcast. Get your take here.
So the way I found out about the mission against the Iranian nuclear facilities is I was scheduled to be on Sky News Australia on their Outsiders show, which is a great program, Saturday evening. And so you always tune in a little bit early. We do this on Zoom, and a producer comes on, checks your volume, and makes sure your laptop is tilted appropriately. And so it was just a few minutes before my segment was due to start. And while I'm watching them they're on television live, the breaking news comes across the wire that American B-2 bombers have hit 3 Iranian nuclear facilities and are now on their way back to the United States. And of course, that's huge news. And these Australian hosts are very excited, talking about it. And it was kind of lucky that I was the next guest due to come on in about 3 minutes, because it could have been like, I don't know what, some Australian talking about some Australian bit of news that would not have been relevant. So it worked out very well. And we had some topics scheduled for that segment. We just ditched those and spent the whole time talking about Iran and this attack. So yeah, it's big news.
Well, I think that's a good place to start. If you just would want to talk a little bit about why that was necessary in your opinion, and what exactly happened. I mean, it was widely reported we took out all of their nuclear capabilities. Is that correct?
Well, the Israelis had been working on that for a while. We took out some of their remaining nuclear capabilities. Look, we have owed the mullahs for a long time. Back in 1979, and you two are too young to remember this, obviously. You were not born for a long time after that. But in 1979, these people stormed the American embassy in Tehran. They took over 100 Americans hostage. They held them for well over a year, treated them abominably, and finally let them go on the day on which Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as president, which was by no means a coincidence. And then subsequent to that, during the Iraq War, it was Iran that was our real opponent in 2006 when things were going badly and we were losing soldiers to improvised explosive devices. Where did those devices come from? They came from Iran. Iran was responsible for killing thousands of American servicemen, and they have launched various attacks on American bases in the Middle East, in the years since. So we have really owed the mullahs for a long, long time. And they've had this nuclear program. And frankly, I find it a little bit hard to understand some of the argument that you see about this here in the United States. there's a debate about whether they were months away from having a nuclear weapon or weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. Well, I would say, and I think Donald Trump would say, it doesn't really matter. They're too darn close.
Both sound bad.
Yeah, weeks, months, take your pick. But for 40 plus years, the Iranian mullahs, the people that run that country, used to be the Ayatollah Khomeini. Now it's the Ayatollah Khamenei. But I mean, they are really two peas in a pod. What do? They lead mobs chanting death to America. They've said over and over again that they have every intention of using these weapons against us, as well, of course, as against Israel. And I believe they have the ICBM capacity to actually deliver nuclear bombs to the United States if they're able to build those devices. So to me, it wasn't all that close a question. We've had prior administrations that just dithered. We had the Obama administration that had this kind of bizarre theory that somehow it would be a good idea for Iran to be the dominant power in the Mideast. And he gave them billions of dollars, which they used to advance terrorism. They control Hamas and Hezbollah as well as the Houthis. And to work on their nuclear program. And then, of course, the Biden administration, as usual, did nothing. And so Donald Trump came into office with this situation where these people that have been saying death to America for 40 years are either weeks or months away from having an operable nuclear weapon.
Now, early on, there were some sort of naysayer reports coming out saying that the attack from the U.S. was mostly symbolic. It really didn't do that much structural damage to these nuclear sites. Is that true?
Oh, I think it's very unlikely. People looking at satellite images here in the U.S. are not in a great position to judge that. But I have a high level of confidence that if we have a well-planned attack, which this obviously was by our Department of Defense, using our very, very best weapons, the B-2 bombers and these giant munitions, as well as Tomahawk missiles launched from a submarine not too far away, I'm sure they did an enormous amount of damage to Iran's nuclear program. You know, Iran had one of their nuclear facilities under a mountain, a place called Fordo. And they would brag about the idea that it was impenetrable, that nobody could destroy that facility because it was under a mountain. And it would be true that nobody in the world except us could destroy that facility. But we have these giant munitions that people refer to as the bunker busting bombs, and we dropped a number of them. I forget the exact number, 3 or 6, but several of them on that Fordo facility. And there's video footage of this huge cloud of fire rising up over Fordo. And I believe that they did it in succession. In other words, not just one of these bombs penetrating all the way, but a succession of them going successively deeper into the mountain. So I'm very confident that whatever I picture the leaders of Iran at this point. Have you seen the Monty Python sketch where the guy has lost both arms and both legs and he say it's only a scratch? Yeah, the Black Knight. It's only a scratch. I think that's kind of the attitude of Iran's leaders. It's only a scratch. You know, they didn't hit us that hard. I don't believe it.
Well, a lot of people have pointed out that this is the plot of Top Gun Maverick.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This mission.
It really is. It's so funny. Well, okay. So that all sounds great. But Iran retaliated pretty quickly, right? In a way that I thought was very odd. President Trump came out and actually said that we were told they were going to retaliate. And they did. And he called it a weak retaliation. Is that right?
A weak response. Well, it was really symbolic, right? So they fired a few missiles at our base in Qatar, but they called ahead and said, we want you to know that this is coming. We don't want anybody to get hurt. You know?
Why?
Seems nice. Seems awfully nice of them.
And so I believe that all of these missiles, except one, were intercepted and shot down, and one landed harmlessly in the ocean or something. So it had no impact. But for the local news in Iran, they trumpeted this as an effective response. And I think they were very, very happy to make that token retaliation, which honor sort of compelled them to do, and then quickly agreed to a ceasefire.
There's been some talk of the Trump administration pursuing a regime change in Iran. How likely do you think that is?
Well, I hope it's likely. I take Trump and Vance and Hegseth at their word when they say that this mission was not about regime change. We are not pursuing regime change. This was simply about destroying the nuclear capability, which Donald Trump has been saying since at least 2011. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. He's been absolutely consistent on that. He's said it over and over and over again, so I'm not sure why anybody was surprised. But the consistent message from our government has been, no, it's not regime change. We are simply degrading that nuclear capability that Iran has been developing. For my part, I hope that it leads to regime change. We're not going to have boots on the ground. The U.S. Army is not going to invade Iran, contrary to what Tucker Carlson and some others might have you believe. That's not going to happen. I don't think Israel is going to invade Iran either, for that matter. I think that the question is, are the Iranian people going to be able to rise up and overthrow this incredibly unpopular dictatorship which they suffer under? Or will the regime in Iran continue to control the military sufficiently that the people just can't do that? You look at what's happened in Cuba. Cuba has descended into just the most miserable poverty, and this has been true for a long time, and yet the Cuban people don't seem to be able to shake off the successors to the tyrant Fidel Castro. Same thing in Venezuela. Venezuela, formerly a wealthy country, has been turned into just a nightmare by socialism, and yet the Venezuelan people have not been able to get rid of the Maduro government. And so I think it's a really open question whether the Iranians are going to be able to achieve regime change or not. But I certainly hope so. Some people have said, well, why are we so concerned about Iran having nuclear weapons? Look, Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Well, there are a number of differences, one of them being that Iran is the number one state sponsor of terrorism in the world and has been for a pretty long time, Hamas, Hezbollah, and others. But the other is that it's Iran where their leaders have been saying for 40 years, death to America. And they are religious fanatics. They're not kidding. They mean it. And that's the reason why Iran having nuclear weapons is very different from any other country in the world having nuclear weapons.
Do you think that point on regime change is important? Because to me, it seems, and I think a lot of conservatives, it seems like it's obviously in the best interest of America for Iran not to have nuclear weapons. I think it's less obvious to me that it would be beneficial to see a regime change in Iran from our perspective as Americans. However, if the Iranian people want to pursue that, more power to them. And I think there's a lot of evidence that they certainly might. A lot of people are unhappy with the government, right? But would it be beneficial to Americans for there to be a regime change there?
Well, I think so. I don't think it would be possible for Iran to have a worse government from our standpoint than the one that they have now. People talk about Libya. We overthrew Gaddafi, and look what happened. If anything, the place has gotten worse. That's probably true. But with respect to Iran, I'm not sure how it gets worse. They've got the radical theology of the mullahs that are bitterly anti-American, determined to develop the weapons that actually could inflict severe damage on the United States. I don't see how any successor government could be worse. And I think it's highly probable that a successor government would be much better. Iran historically is not that backward a country. Iran used to be a pretty progressive, relatively secular, relatively pro-Western nation. And then the Islamic radicals overthrew the Shah and took control of the government. That was a disaster for Iran. And a lot of people would like to see the Shah return and form a constitutional monarchy, perfectly viable form of government. And Iran has got a lot of potential. It's a big country. It historically has been a relatively progressive country, unlike, for example, Iraq. If you look at Census Bureau data here in the United States, there are years in which the number one top earning ethnic group in the United States is Iranian Americans. And the reason for that, of course, is that when the mullahs took over in 1979, who fled? Well, a lot of the people who fled were business people. And Iranians are just for centuries have been well known as smart business people. And they do very, very well, extraordinarily well here in the United States. And I think given the chance, they could do plenty well in Iran, too.
Was that transformation a sudden, like overnight change when radical Islamists took over the government? Because people have been posting photos online of, relatives who grew up in Iran in the 60s and 70s, and it looks so different from what it is today. I could not believe it was the same country. Was that a quick change? Did it happen overnight, or was it a slower transformation to what it's become today?
Well, it happened rapidly. It's been a long time, and I'm hazy on the details, but it was not a slow transition. It was a revolution. It happened rapidly. The Shah fled the country, and the Islamic radicals took over under the guidance of the Ayatollah Khomeini, and they whipped up this religious fervor. They had crowds, in Tehran. They stormed the American embassy, as I mentioned, and took all those Americans hostage, held them for well over a year. It was a nightmarish era, and it's continued to be a nightmarish era. I saw just recently somebody was interviewing a young Iranian exile and asked this woman why she's so bitterly hostile to the mullah's regime. And the woman answered, well, I guess it has to do with my sister. They raped her, cut off her breasts, and hanged her. And this kind of thing happens all the time. I saw a picture just yesterday of a young woman who a very pretty young woman, who was badly disfigured. She'd lost an eye, and half of her face was really seriously disfigured. And that was the result of an acid attack condoned by the government because she had the temerity to walk out in public without having her face covered. So Iran has gone from being really a pretty good place as of the 1950s and 60s, say, to now being just this dystopian nightmare. And so I understand why our government is saying we're not about regime change. But for my part, I hope the regime does change.
Yeah, and you talked about Iranians in America, a lot of those ones that came in legally and have really helped and benefited America. I know people here in Minnesota that are Iranian and have done great things for our state. But what about ones that have come in more recently from Iran? Just today on the podcast, we talked about someone who was here illegally from Iran and had been here in St. Paul for 8 years before just this weekend being arrested because he had ties to Hezbollah. Is that a concern then? You hear people talk about sleeper cells and things like that. Is that more of a concern to us now than a threat coming from way across the world?
Well, after we bombed those nuclear facilities, it sure is. The Biden administration lured into the country, really, somewhere between 10 million and 15 million people, unknown, unvetted, goodness knows who they are. We know that a considerable number of them are terrorists or suspected terrorists, and I think everybody assumes that there are indeed Iranian sleeper cells here in the United States. We know that Iran plotted to assassinate Donald Trump. There are criminal charges that have been brought in connection with that. And so I don't doubt that there are some sleeper cells here. And Dmitry Medvedev of Russia confirmed that, actually. He was denouncing our attack on the nuclear facilities, and he said, "Well, now the truth can be told. This is all about nuclear weapons, not about electricity." And he mentioned the idea that there could be retaliation through these sleeper cells. I think one basic question is, if you are part of that kind of a cell here in the U.S. and if you get instructions from Tehran to start carrying out terrorist attacks, are you going to do it? I don't know. There may very well be some people in that situation who think that it would be wiser for them to just kind of sit back and see what happens and not start committing terrorism at the behest of a regime that may very well be on its last legs. So, yeah, it's something to be concerned about, but I guess so far at least it hasn't happened.
We have time for just probably one or two more questions. John, I remember sitting in a college classroom taking a political science class on international affairs.
Oh, no.
And I know. And there was this big debate about, nuclear arms and basically why should America and its allies get to pick and choose which other countries have nuclear weapons. What would be your response to that?
Well, we act out of regard for our national security. Our national security is not threatened by Israel having nuclear weapons, which they undoubtedly do, although they never confirm that fact. They're not going to use them against us. There are countries that we'd rather not have nuclear weapons, like Pakistan, but they do. You know, we didn't have a way to stop it. Pakistan and India both have nuclear weapons. That's kind of a standoff. Of course, they are pretty bitter enemies. So if you look at Iran, this is the country that's been saying death to America. This is the country that stormed our embassy and held our people hostage, that killed our soldiers in Iraq. These are our bitter enemies. And that's why we don't want them to have nuclear weapons. We're not going to bomb anybody with our nukes. The other side pretends that they're concerned about this, that it's totally faux anxiety. Everybody knows we're not bombing anybody with our nukes. They're strictly as a deterrent so that people don't attack us. But when you are dealing with fanatics of the kind who have been ruling Iran now for some decades, you can't count on being able to deter them. They may be willing to perish for the sake of executing an attack. And so this is why we cannot afford for a rogue country, a bitterly anti-American country, and in some respects an irrational leadership to have those dangerous weapons.
I think that's an interesting discussion happening on the right too right now, is what is America first when it comes to foreign policy. I've seen a lot of people on X kind of arguing over this. Is it exclusively non-interventionalism? Is that America first? Because in my opinion, I think what you're expressing is it's America first to protect our safety by going in and doing a specific targeted hit on Iran and getting rid of their nukes. Obviously, there's a fear that, it could go into something bigger, but I think it was a risk worth taking. But it's an interesting debate, I think, just on the right too right now. Let's go up to current day and then looking forward, because you mentioned the ceasefire. I think maybe both countries have already violated the ceasefire. Is that right? And do you have hope that the ceasefire is it and it's going to be happy from here on out?
Well, Trump at least says that both countries have violated the ceasefire. As we speak, things could be going on. I mean, by the time people listen to this podcast, there may be new news, and we'll see how it all plays out. If you want my guess is that Iran has had enough. And my guess is that Israel thinks they, for now, have done enough. They've killed off a big part of the Iranian leadership. They made a conscious decision not to kill the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, Khamenei. He's still around, and that was a political decision by Israel. And I think a correct one. But the rest of the leadership seems to be mostly gone. I don't know who's calling the shots in Tehran right now. And so I think that Israel is going to be content to let things sit where they are. I think they're very happy, obviously, that we contributed to degrading the Iranian nuclear program. I think Iran has been hit very, very hard. They've got to sort out their leadership and try to figure out who's in charge. And they got to worry about domestic turmoil. And we've been talking about the fact they're very unpopular. If you took a vote, they'd be voted out. Mm-hmm. And so I think they've got a lot on their minds besides trying to stir up more trouble. And my guess is that the ceasefire is going to hold.
Well, John, thank you so much for joining us today for this little international affairs update. A little unusual for the show, but I think it was definitely warranted this week.
Well, especially since we're all closely monitoring the situation here in Minnesota.
Call back.
By the way, closely, I assume that means closely monitoring for possible terrorist attacks. Why would there be possible terrorist attacks? Because Joe Biden invited in 10 to 15 million illegals, and we have no idea who they are. That's why people like Tim Walz are saying they're closely monitoring the situation.
Amen.
That was a mic drop.
That really was. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Remember, as always, to like, share, comment, subscribe, do all those things to help us reach more people. We will see you next week.